The year is 2003. You just came home from school. You did your homework, well, some of it at least. You fight with your older sibling about what channel you should put the TV on because they want to watch MTV and you want to see the Cartoon Network. A friend of yours comes over to play and you build a great Lego fortress together before seeing the new episode of Pokemon. Life is good. Fast forward to today, and we got this. Welcome to the communication couch. Let's face it, guys. Remember Haley, Eminem's daughter? This is her now. Remember this little guy? Not so little anymore. Dewey? Oh, thank God, Dewey is still a kid. Wait, what? He's 29! The kids who were born in 2000 are already 20 years old. I didn't even register myself being 20, and I'm already 26. That's like the second half of my 20s already. I don't... Excuse me while I go jump out of the window. How did this happen? The last thing I remember, it was 2001, then it was 2002, 2003, then all of a sudden it was 2010 somehow, and now it's 2020. Well, actually, it's already almost 2021. Even 2020 is almost over. Where did all this time go? And looking back at this time, like late 90s and early 2000s, although it feels like it's been just recently, looking back, it was actually a completely different time. And sometimes it feels like it was a much better time as well. First of all, it's incredible how different life was when we didn't have smartphones. Do you even remember that? Do you even remember it? There was some certain magic to not being able to reach anyone at any time. When you wanted to talk with someone, you had to go to their house or call them on the phone. And if they weren't at home, you couldn't reach them. Sounds so weird now. Oh yeah, and back then people didn't get a panic attack every time they got a phone call. If you're going to call me, you better text me in advance. I need to mentally prepare for that. It seems like meeting a friend back then was so much more precious than today exactly because it was limited. When you talk with a friend you haven't seen in a while and they tell you like, oh, I went for a vacation in Hawaii, you'd be surprised. Or maybe they would have even sent you a postcard. Remember those? Today you just say like, oh yeah, I saw it on your Instagram. All 72 photos you uploaded. Generally, we didn't have access to so much information all the time. Everything was much more spontaneous. If you wanted to watch something on TV, you couldn't just choose anything you want at any time. You had to see when that show was on TV, and you'd have to be at home at that time and watch it then. And you couldn't just watch 30 episodes in one day. You'd watch it once a week, and then for a week long, you'd be wondering what would happen next. Or going to a DVD store and picking up a movie just based on the picture on it and hoping it's good. So watching TV also had this magical feeling where you didn't have all the control and it was awesome. And then when the internet came, it was such a weird thing. You'd have to plug in that cable and then all these sounds like and your mom would only let you do it after 7 because it was cheaper that way. I mean, imagine today saying, I want to look something up, but I'll do it after 7 when it's cheaper. I don't think my children are going to believe me when I tell them that story. And it was these early days of the internet. There were forums and chat rooms and ugly websites, flash games, all kind of crazy stuff. And now it's all like, look at me, I'm so professional or cool. Today everything is super regulated. You have to make an account for everything and you identify yourself. Our devices are listening to us. No, Siri, I didn't mean anything bad by that. I can't escape the impression that back then everything seemed cooler, more spontaneous, and more magical. And yes, certainly we also had all these limitations, but it's exactly those limitations that made things meaningful. However, with all that said, it's only fair to our present time and to Siri to also look into the other side of things. All the things we have today, it's needless to say that they made our lives incredibly more comfortable and so much easier. I mean, imagine having to go to the library when you want to look something up. And one thing I feel about the world today is that it is extremely fragmented. Somehow, before there was certain fashion, certain movies or music that everyone knew. There weren't so many options, so many providers, so many opinions, so many everything. So it was easier to navigate the world and kind of easier to belong. Easier if you were part of that mainstream. But if you were different and didn't fit in, you had a pretty hard time. And today, exactly because there is so much, I don't know, every music genre separates into 20 subgenres, it's easier to express yourself and find other people in your vicinity that are similar to you. And even if you can't find them in your vicinity, you'll probably find them online, which makes you feel that you're not alone. So you might feel overwhelmed with all the information and content jumping at you all the time, but that's only because of the wonderful possibilities today that everyone can create or start initiatives or businesses. 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, oh yeah, 90s were 30 years ago, it would have been impossible for someone like me to make a show by themselves sitting on a couch from IKEA, which you should subscribe to, by the way. So, to kind of put it down to one sentence, or a couple of sentences probably, in my opinion, the biggest change is that many limitations have been removed, which has created more comfort, but also given us immense control and freedom. The most basic example is that today we are so rarely bored. Before, there were times when you didn't have much to do. For instance, riding a train or in public transport or sitting on a toilet. You'd look out the window thinking some random stuff. So sometimes it would be just boring, but sometimes it would lead to some great ideas or funny thoughts. But today, with all the devices and especially with the smartphone, you always have access to almost anything in the world. So you are always in control. And it's easy to get severely overwhelmed with that control. But we can't go back in time. Progress has to go on, and it was progress in the first place that brought us all the great things that we also had. So let's not say the kids these days are only on their phones all day long. It was much different when we were kids. Because that's exactly what they were saying when we were kids. Oh, they're playing video games all the time. And before it, it was, oh, the kids nowadays are only watching TV, it's ruining them. Before that, it was the radio. And I'm sure that it's been that way ever since humans first discovered fire. I'm sure they were saying something like, oh, the youth today are only sitting around the fire. Oh, that's going to spoil them. Well, actually, they probably said something like, googa, googa, googa. But that's what they meant by that. Let us admit that our view of the past is influenced by the fact that it was the time of our childhood and growing up, and we probably remember it a bit better than it actually was. The time today has new opportunities and also new challenges, so let's make the best of it. The tremendous freedom and control we have today requires a much more aware and conscious life. You have so many options at your disposal, so you have to think consciously who you want to be, what kind of life you want to live, and what of these possibilities is useful for your well-being. And then take responsibility for it. Take conscious action and shape your everyday habits with respect to these things like social networks, how you use your phone, or binge watching TV shows. The world wasn't better before. It was different. It was a wonderful time back then, and it's also a wonderful time we're living in now. It's not an easy time because it requires more from us, more active input. But that's why, if we're willing to do it, we can create a much better and richer life than the generations before us were even able to dream of. It's not about the time we're living in, it's about the life that we create for ourselves. Thank you and have a great day.